Welcome, everybody. I'm Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. Today, I've got with me Nadia Phillips. Nadia is in New Zealand, which for me is the other side of the world. So, for the power of technology. Before we start, Nadia, where can people find you? Where are you on social media? Where can they make contact with you?
I am on probably the easiest is LinkedIn. So I'm Nadia Phillips on LinkedIn. I work for Umbrellar cloud company. So if you search up either of those two things, you'll be able to find me. I'm also probably more prominent actually on Instagram as well. So Nadia Phillips NZ on Instagram. And you will also see us on Spotify under the podcast Into the Cloud. So if you search Into the Cloud, my Kiwi accent there may not be quite as clear. So Into the Cloud on Spotify.
And so today we're going to talk about why a company or companies that are choosing between branding or MQLs, because you've been on quite a journey there at Umbrella. Before we unpack that, let's just talk about you for a bit. So let's just give people an outline of the journey that you've been on in terms of your career and how you've got to where you are today.
Awesome. I'm so happy to talk about that. So my background has been in marketing. So I was down a marketing track from university. So marketing and economics background. Went down the marketing line with my career until I hit the ripe old age of 30, where I had my lovely two boys, and I actually left the corporate world, as much as you would say, in that had a little bit of a glass ceiling, had a few challenges, had my boys. My husband has a custom hot rod and motorcycle workshop, and at that time
Amazing.
like does very cool stuff. And at that time it was how can we build this workshop, how can we build this business? So really moved from the corporate world into the very small business, having two boys at the time, and really kind of being quite disencouraged, I think, actually, by the corporate world and what I'd come across. I didn't fit the mold, right? I didn't fit the mold. I have tattoos. I was a female. I was quite voicey. I didn't fit the mold 10, 15 years ago of what was in the corporate world, and kind of went into this small business, helped build that, did what I absolutely love. I was never a stay-at-home mum. I was never going to go down that track. And yet here I was, having my two boys, I think, was probably the best thing for me. It changed me for the better for everything that it does. And after about 7 years of working together and living together in a workshop and having children, we decided that probably the best thing was for me to go back to work. And that was totally an agreed thing. And so at the time, I happened to get a role in a local company here in the Waikato. So in New Zealand, I'm based in the Waikato, which is just south of Auckland, which is where most people know. So right in what I would say the heart or center of New Zealand. So about an hour and a half away from Auckland. And so I got into a company there with a marketing role that was very much an IT company. So at the time, I didn't know that. I didn't know that they were one of Microsoft's partners, and I just thought I was going into this marketing role. So that was 3 years ago, and that was my venture into the IT industry. And so I had a year there before Umbrella shoulder tapped me, and asked me to basically. So Umbrella is one of Microsoft's 4 distributors here in New Zealand.
Right.
So the company I was with was one of the partners within the ecosystem of the distributorship of Umbrella. And they shoulder tapped me and basically said, what you've done for them, can you come and do that for our whole ecosystem?
Right.
So it's been an absolute upward learning curve. We have had I've gone from being in a very SMB and what was agritech, what was in retail, kind of marketing background to this technology background, and having 3 years of really a very uphill learning curve. But at the end of the day, I learned a lot of what I learned in the small business is what's taken me through the success of into the tech industry and into the corporate industry, because I think a lot of the time we forget that in the corporate world, people say, oh, but why isn't the business doing this, or why isn't the business doing that, or where's the money? They forget that actually there isn't this magical money tree or this magical kind of corporate above. We are the corporate, we are the people, and we actually can make the difference in those businesses. And I think quite often people will fall back on that's somebody else's job or somebody else's responsibility or accountability. And I guess I'm coming from my background. There was nobody else. When you're in a small business, you are the only person, right? You're the only.
And you were an owner business, so you and your husband own the business. Therefore, if you're spending money, you're pretty much taking it out of your pocket.
Exactly, and I think that's a real key learning. I actually, even when I was in Enlighten, which was the partner that I was with before Umbrella shoulder tapped me, was there was one instance where, you know, it was going through COVID. It was definitely, there was some difficulties, and there was a comment one day made in one of the meetings where we said that was an owner operated business as well, and the comment was made that the CEO owner was actually, he was putting money in, his own money in every month to help pay for the salaries. And people didn't realize that. They didn't realize that, hold on, if there wasn't enough cash flow, or if there wasn't enough coming in through the books that month, he was physically taking out of his bank account and putting it into the business bank account to be able to pay the staff so that nobody got laid off over COVID, right? Like that's the sort of insight. And I think if you can have that insight of accountability and that realism of the business and be very open about the business, then it gives you a whole different insight in everything we do, from marketing, from sales, from delivery, from project management, because it becomes a reality. We're not just here spending, spending the corporate money. This is actually, this engine is for all of us to do what we love. But if we don't make this engine tick right, then there's not the cash flow to kind of pay everyone and keep going. So that's kind of been my journey from the small business into the enterprise, or into the corporate. So I've been with Umbrella for about I've been with Umbrella for 2 years. Of just going into my fourth job description, my fourth job title, which is actually head of business operations. So that's moving from a marketing role actually through into head of M&O, which was marketing operations, and I've now actually just moving into head of business operations. Right. So yeah, that's kind of been my journey up to this point. And Tim, we met because I was emceeing one of the marketing association in New Zealand. Actually got you to come and speak.
You did.
And I was emceeing that session, which is how we met.
It is. And it was something, I think I was speaking at, it was either 10 or 11 o'clock my time.
Yes.
My time, because I finished and I went off to bed. So, but yes, that's how we met. And I think that, what one of the things that you said to me when we talked before was that when you went into operations, what you wanted to do was to be far more hands-on in the organization, because you could see that there certain things certain things weren't happening, and that was causing the business to leak money.
Yes.
My words, not yours.
No, 100%. So it's a really interesting concept where we had, and this is one example of it, right? We had a sales were hitting the revenue number, which Tim, I'm sure you would say, but that's great, right? Sales are hitting the revenue number. That's what we all want. That's what they're paid on. But they were selling the revenue number with a product mix that was breaking our delivery business. It was breaking our team, because we have certain revenue lines that across, some of them are more product, so they're more tooling and product, and so that's your MMR, your reoccurring revenue, and that's your not so hands-on people stuff that's very scalable, not as profitable. as far as margin goes, but very scalable, not needing the resource. We have managed services, which is a subscription model, and then you move into your professional services. At the moment, we're coming out of a pandemic. We've got people restrictions. We can't get resources. We can't get enough engineers. We can't get enough. If there's anybody out there who's a cloud engineer who would like to work in our regions, I would definitely reach out, because we are screaming for cloud engineers, but so's everybody else in the market. So the easiest thing for a salesperson to sell is resources to our cloud engineers, because nobody can get them. And so what was happening was that our cloud engineers, or from our professional services, were getting body shopped out, and it was putting this. So we were hitting a revenue number, no problem, but it was putting so much pressure on our delivery team, because it was that real resource heavy. And then what that was doing was that we were having to contract. We were having to break margin, because we were having to have contract rates. That margin there. So it was really coming back and looking at what actually ended up happening is we looked and we went, actually, marketing hasn't enabled our sales team enough in the other revenue lines and the other offerings that we do, so that they were actually enabled enough to be able to go and sell the other revenue lines. So we have a better product mix, so that we hit our sales revenue in a way that it's going to actually have the right share across the business. And so it was, even though when you look at it from a very a high level, and from our budgeting and from all of that side of it, it's interesting, because I think from a marketing point of view, quite often you can be thinking about, it might be about campaigns or events or what's going on, but actually when we really take a step back, marketing needs to be looking at what's the impact on the business right now, where are our constraints, what's actually happening, and how do we enable, because we're more than just putting an advertising campaign out or getting a lead in. It's actually more around how are we enabling the business to go to market, and that is both in our voice out to the market, our voice with it to our customers, and then also how are we actually structuring and enabling the team to actually put our products out to market.
There's an old saying that revenue is the vanity and profit is the sanity. And it's very true. All the way through the IT business that I've worked in, we were always measured on revenue, but that's mainly because we were making 90-100% margin. So you can do that. But when you're a reseller, you've got the constraints in terms of how much margin that you're making on those products. And obviously there's a different mix to the margin that you're making when you own the services. So there's a different mix there. I totally understand that.
Yeah, for sure. It's an interesting model.
So what's this thing about the push and pull between brand and MQLs? Where's this come in into your thinking and the way that you've gone about things? Because I know that you when we've talked before, this has been really important for you. I've lost your sound. Can you hear me? You can hear me. I can't hear you. This platform's quite stable, so I'm not quite sure what the problem is. No, I've lost your sound completely. Is it your earbuds? Are they packed in? I still can't hear you now. Sorry, I can't hear you. It's very odd, Nadia, that it just cuts. The sound just cuts. You are 12,000 miles away, so Don't worry. It doesn't matter. It's these things happen. I mean, the thing about live streaming is it's live, and we have to push the boundaries forward, and sometimes the IT doesn't work. I mean, I would say that Restream is a pretty pretty good platform. It's strange that your sound just cut out like that. I'll let you back in. Try that.
Right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I have no idea why that just happened, because I literally hadn't touched anything, and it just had the mute suddenly was across, and it wouldn't let me unmute it whatsoever. So I lost you for about 20 seconds, and then it just was mute, and I'm like, I have no idea why. So I actually missed your last question as well.
So
let's start again.
Let's start again. You joined the business. You joined Umbrella. You looked at and saw that there was a problem in terms of the mix. So one of the things that you've been doing is working very closely with sales in terms of understanding, working with sales and the business to understand what it is that you need to be doing so that marketing is generating the right leads for the right mix. But one of the things that you also talked about was that there was this push and pull between the brand and actually getting MQL. So talk us through that.
Yeah, massively. So there's been a real move towards, I guess, marketing, where getting marketing outside of being just doing some advertising, doing some billboards, doing some paper magazines. With digital now, we can obviously do campaigns, we can push those out, we can see all the analytics that come off it, we can see how many leads we get from it, we can literally measure right through. In fact, we have to be careful not to become creepy, that we if you click on a link, we can see who you are, where you're from, how long you read it, and all of those things. And you've got to be careful actually not to be creepy coming back to respond to people in a way that they go, how did you know about me? So there's the digital aspect of marketing has just propelled itself forward so much. And there's been this real light bulb around, we can push content out, we can push campaigns out, and we can get leads. But what's ended up happening of content that has been pushed out, and actually a lot of it doesn't get read, a lot of it isn't seen. But this is still how you're laughing, Tim, because you know that on LinkedIn.
I do.
Right? It's a company typically pushes out a white paper. No one's going to read it.
No one reads
it gets pushed out. And I guess it's I've got this real challenge in the B2B market where I'm not selling a can of Coke. I'm not trying to sell a product that is $5 or that is $10, or that I'm going onto my Instagram and I'm like, oh, that's a nice item of clothing or something, and I'm going to click on it and I'm going to buy it. I'm in a business where I'm very B2B. This is very relationships. This is where our sales may take a month, 2 months, 12 months to go through, and they're a very large item ticket. Now, if I'm in this situation and I go and do a digital campaign, what we found was we had these digital campaigns out that we would, how many clicks can we get? How many leads can we get? Which is literally like an email address. Well, guess what? There's sales tools out there that I can just buy people's email addresses. I can go and I can find all of the enterprise accounts that are sitting in my region, and I can buy all the email addresses and give them a cold call. It's about equivalent as if I put a digital lead out there and get someone's email address in it. It's kind of about as warm. There's no relationship, there's no reputation. Most of the time when our sellers call them, they say, we have no idea who you are and why I filled in that form and what it was that I got. But that's how we've been measuring marketing. How many leads can you get in? Marketing, I need 40 MQLs this month. But then they call them and then they're cold. There's nothing there. There's no real knowledge. There's no relationships. There's no need. There's no idea around where the value is or what that customer is actually after. And so I believe we've actually come a little bit full circle, where we've gone, what really matters is people. What really matters is that human contact and that conversation. And so I've got a real battle at the moment because I'm still being measured on MQLs, I guess, and how those MQLs are being pushed through into SQLs, so sales qualified leads versus a marketing qualified lead. Where I would say, well, if that's what you want, here you go. Here's 40 email addresses, or here's 350 clicks on our newsletter this week, and I can tell you who they are, what they clicked on, what article they clicked on, what they're reading. And yet sales will go, but that doesn't help me. I call them and none of them are interested because we actually haven't gotten to the conversation.
Yeah.
And so I've got this real battle between a short-term digital campaign, grabbing somebody's email address, which actually I can pay for on a sales tool down the road, versus how do I actually build our thought leadership and our reputation and our brand and market so that we are the trusted leader, which again, this is a little bit of a buzzword, right? Being a thought leader, but it is a bit of a buzzword. But if you think about it, my job actually and how we're switching up our marketing, and it's still a battle, believe me, because I'm still getting from sales, why aren't I getting qualified leads coming in? But how am I creating demand generation versus lead generation? So we're moving to more of a demand generation model, where by pushing out the content and the thought leadership, by being in front of the people, by having the conversations through podcasts, through audio, really showing the market or being in front of the right people in the right places. And I must say, this is being in front of places like YouTube and Spotify and places where people are when they're walking, being where they are and where they want to be and how they want to take that information. But how do I become more of a conversation and more of a thought leadership? And this really got us to the point where actually in my job in marketing, my job is to create a conversation. Now, if I can create a conversation for our salesperson to have, an opportunity for our salesperson to have a conversation, isn't that better than me giving you an email address from someone who's clicked on a digital campaign ad? But how do you measure that? It's so hard when you think, I've created a conversation for that salesperson to have, and potentially that's going to create a massive load more opportunities with that company. I'm building a relationship with that company. I'm using my thought leadership, or the way that we're helping to amplify the information, or the way that we're communicating with them about how they can improve a system. We're giving them that value for them, and why do they care what we're doing? But we're giving them that value, and then we're creating the opportunity for the salesperson to be able to have that conversation. But there's no metric, there's no click on a link or an automated lead that's coming into Salesforce that's saying, you did this. So how do we measure that without me looking like I've got no MQLs coming in? I've got what I'm doing isn't being successful. And actually, you need to go back to what you were doing because we're not getting any leads.
Is that because you've got the wrong measure, or what is that? Because I agree with you. I mean, doing things like going where your clients are, which could be on Spotify, or looking at demand generation versus lead generation. I mean, white papers, nobody reads them. For example, HubSpot is a great example. I use HubSpot as a platform, not as their website, as a go-to, because there's great research. So what happens is I'm all over the HubSpot website. So I get these people from HubSpot ringing me up saying, you've been all over the, you really need to talk to us. I say, well, no, I don't, because I use Nimble as a CRM. I'm very happy, thank you. And they go, I don't understand. And they go, well, just because I've been on your website doesn't mean I'm interested in you as a business. And that's that, and that is that dichotomy that we have in terms of, we have all this stuff where we can measure it, but that doesn't actually measure interest by somebody.
And that's exactly, like, you've nailed it there, where HubSpot would have put you being on their website as an MQL.
Yeah.
And yet you're really not. It's really it's a vanity metric to me. And it's definitely, when you look at a business and you look at it from the business point of view, if I'm walking into a into like a senior leadership meeting where or going to a board report, and I'm up against the sales team who are presenting revenue numbers and forecasts and pipeline, or realization of our utilization of our team and what's actually being realized as far as invoices. And then I come in and go, I had this many clicks on the website. Like, it's just, you're not at that level, right? It's not a business metric that we should be looking at. And yet marketing seems to be sitting at this point where they're going, well, how many clicks have you had? How many email addresses have you collected? And it's that constant battle of sales saying, well, and then sales will say, well, I don't agree with, these are not good leads. I'm not getting, like, HubSpot would have gone back and gone, that was not a good lead, even though that's what all of the metrics were showing. So I think it's really, so for us, we're actually taking a move around, and it's still a conversation that we're having, but it's a move to actually looking at the business metrics. So as a team, as a sales and marketing team, being a revenue team, how are we supporting each one of the territories to be able to grow their conversations? And then if we're growing their conversations and there's enough pipeline and there's enough pipeline in there and forecasted out for utilization for our team, have we not succeeded? Have we not done our job as long as there's enough pipeline? Now, if there isn't enough pipeline, I would argue we haven't done our job right. If the sales team aren't saying, oh my God, we've got too much, we can't deal with this, our delivery team saying our utilization's out the door, we cannot fulfill any more opportunities, then I would say, okay, marketing's probably done enough. At the end of the day, all marketing should be trying to do is to support pipeline generation for our sellers. And that, to me, is through, I took it from one of the ladies she just because she worded it so well, on the same marketing association session that we were on, Tim, and that was the 3 R's around reputation. So everything we do should be building the 3 R's. So is it building our reputation? Is it building our relationships? And therefore, is it building our revenue? Because if we can have more conversations, build more relationships, if we can be, the reputation was the brand, if we can do those 3 things, then we're going to be winning. And to me, that was so strong to hear that around the 3 R's, because it was, is the work that my marketing team are doing either building our reputation and market, which is the branding, or are they building the relationships with our customers? And it's really made us take a step back and analyze what it is that we're doing. Is our activity doing one of those 2 things? And if it isn't, then we've stopped it.
Okay, and that's brave.
Yeah.
Because you've seen me present. You know the world that I live in. And we get a lot of people coming to us saying that marketing isn't working anymore. In fact, everyone that we generally talk to say that marketing isn't working anymore. I mean, is that something that you're seeing?
100%. I've literally had, if he watches this, he's probably gonna giggle. I literally had we call him our chief revenue officer. He's our sales manager, essentially, but he actually looks across. He's in charge of our revenue. And he said he just did a review with all of the sellers, and even he said, oh, we need a tally team. Marketing's not working. And it was interesting because I realized actually that was a fault, because I hadn't communicated all of the bits that marketing had actually, that we'd pivoted to. But this is a real impact. This is very real. Marketing isn't working anymore. That is people are saying, because even events, we had to cancel an event, and that was because of cancel multiple events actually, and that's really because of COVID. We've had things outside our that we haven't been able to stop. So COVID has restricted us being able to hold events. We're just starting to get back into them now, but then we're still finding issues. Even we had to still hold one off because we seem to be having another wave of sicknesses and things like that. We are getting, oh, well, marketing's not working. Your events aren't working. Your digital campaigns aren't working. And so we've had to really pivot and go, well, what we were doing, I literally stopped everything. I cancelled all our digital campaigns. I even put our agency on hold. I actually put our agency on hold for about 3 or 4 months. And then when we came back on board, we re-onboarded with them with a whole different strategy and look, because we were like, this isn't working. This is broken. And I've taken the time to try and rebuild that engine. And we're still rebuilding. But how do we be brave, and how do we actually look at what activities are supporting those conversations? That is the question. If I'm looking at something and saying this is not supporting a seller to have a conversation, then there is absolutely no point in us doing it. It has got to be building that conversation. And that's that long term. And the other difficulty that you have with marketing is that we will be looking a quarter or two out, whereas a seller is often looking within the quarter. And so it's that pivot and that pressure between, but we need something now. And we're saying, but we're looking a little bit more longer term. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing is really rolling out, and will roll out to be effective in the next quarter. And that's really hard if you've got a bit of a gap or a hole, or something's moved this month or next month, if something slipped. And so it's definitely, I believe that there is challenges. I do believe that there's a lot of where they're saying marketing's not working, and the unfortunate part of that is that will blemish marketing in general.
Nadia, I've let it run on our 20 minutes because we had that gap, and I will splice it together that no one will know when I put this on YouTube. Remind people where they can get hold of you.
You can get hold of me at Nadia Phillips on LinkedIn, Nadia Phillips NZ on LinkedIn, and also Nadia Phillips NZ on Instagram. And if you'd like to listen to more about the conversations that we're having about the tech industry, on Spotify on the Into the Cloud podcast.
Fantastic. Nadia, thank you so much for coming on in your evening and my morning. It's been a great conversation. Lots to learn there, and I think all of us are I have the same problem. So you're not alone.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Tim.
You're welcome, and have a good evening.